Immediately after the start, the Olympic steeplechaser took the lead to pace Bannister for the first half-mile. Chataway's lying in third position. The race was run at Oxford as part of a meeting between the Amateur Athletic Association and Oxford University.
The first lap was about 58, but I didn't feel it at all. I hardly felt I was running, and it wasn't until about the three-quarter mile mark, by which time Chris Chataway was then leading, that I began to feel the strain of it. We heard the lap time, and it was just on 3 minutes. So I had to manage the last lap in under 60 seconds.
With 250 yards to go, 25-year-old Bannister took the lead with an amazing burst of speed. He went on to achieve the world record of a mile in under 4 minutes, sought after by athletes for over 40 years. His time was 3 minutes, 59.4 seconds.
It was only when they made the announcement, a track, British, Commonwealth, European, and then world record, and the time was 3 minutes, and the rest of the announcement was drowned in the noise.
Since the 6th of May, 1954, the day Roger Bannister became the first man to run a mile in under 4 minutes, to the present, a span of exactly 30 years, 10 athletes have bettered or lowered the world mile record. Each has taken a unique talent, fusing it with discipline and a ruthless determination to succeed. Each has learned to live with physical pain, accompany fear, and risk the unknown. Each has attained international celebrity. These are the Supermilers, the 11 members of one of the most elite clubs in world sport. Just 46 days after Roger Bannister became the first man to break 4 minutes for a mile, the world record was lowered by a further 1.5 seconds. The new holder, Australian John Landy. On the 7th of August 1954, in Vancouver, Canada, in the Empire Games 1 mile final, the only 2 sub-4 minute milers in world athletics, Roger Bannister and John Landy, were to meet head-on for the first and only time. The strong favorite, Landy.
It's still Landy, followed by Bannister, with the rest strung out behind. Bannister's been taking it calmly up till now, but he's beginning to close on the Aussie. This isn't his famous final burst yet. The finish is still a long way off. Slowly, steadily, and very surely, Bannister's closing on Landy. Only 400 yards to go. And now Bannister begins his finishing burst. 100 yards to the line, and he's passing Landy.
I looked up and there was about 80 metres to go, and there was Roger in front of me, and I tried to make it up, but I couldn't, and he got to the line first. I think of all the recollections I've got of Roger Bannister, that would be the strongest.
Bannister falls almost senseless into waiting arms. That last fantastic burst sapped every ounce of energy from him. His time of 3 minutes 58.
I was a front runner, and my experience in Australia was running very much on my own. Without making any excuses, I don't think I really had any other way to run. There was nobody else in the race. I felt I had to take the lead. My plan was very simple, and that was to run Roger Bannister into the ground if I could. And I think I went fairly close to it. I just wasn't quite good enough.
Although John Landy broke Roger Bannister's world mile record, he will always be remembered as the man somewhat overshadowed by the Englishman. Yet Landy should be recognised as one of the first and bravest of the great front runners. A shy man, an athlete of extreme dignity, who ran for the enjoyment without being seduced by the accolades and glory. Today, recently retired as a civil servant, John Landy lives quietly with his family in the very Melbourne suburb where he was born and used to train.
But I always felt that I could have done better, and I guess every runner that's run the mile would feel that there was something that you could have done to have run faster, or there was some race that you could have won.
Yorkshire, the rugged north of England. Its harsh winter weather is reflected in the grit and character of its people, especially its sportsmen, names like Jeff Boycott, Harvey Smith, and one of the best-loved athletes Britain has ever produced, Derek Ibbotson. For almost 2 decades, until he retired in the late 1960s, Derek Ibbotson trained around the roads and hilly streets of Huddersfield, where he was born and still lives today.
The determination from my Yorkshire background, obviously living in Huddersfield, which is a very, very tough place to live with lots of hills and quite cold weather, you get a lot of stamina, lots of strength and lots of determination because, you know, living is harder than it is in the south. This thing about Yorkshire grit and determination comes to you very early when you're hearing about the Yorkshire cricketers and the footballers and other athletes in this area. And so when you get into this position, you think, well, you know, I'm supposed to be very gritty and very determined, so I'm going to have to be. And it does help.
At the White City Stadium, London, on the 19th of July, 1957, in front of a capacity crowd on a field of the world's top milers, Derek Ibbotson was to run the most important race of his career. A race that would carry his reputation as an athlete for the next decade.
But Derek Ibbotson, number 71, steadily overtakes him. Now he's passed, and pounding ahead at the top of it, looking more like a half-miler than a miler. This is the stuff records are made of, and the crowd's pretty sure another one's on the way. And they're not disappointed. Yards ahead of Delaney and the Czech, Ibbotson streaks for the tape to smash the world record by nearly a second in 3 minutes 57.2.
With it, you've got the dual stripe that we asked for. The double heel count has been left off, but I think that's a good idea. And the sole is exactly the one that
Derek Ibbotson was the last of a generation of athlete that ran for the fun of it, the satisfaction, the honour. Although able to draw thousands of paying spectators into a stadium, from the day he left school, Ibbotson had to work for a living.
I think that'll really go well. The difference between my day and the present day is, of course, they are full-time, not, well, so let's say professional. They are full-time athletes. They do nothing else but athletics. I mean, I have run at White City for Great Britain. When I finished work at lunchtime here in Yorkshire, taking the train down to London, taking the underground to White City, got there at 6 o'clock. I've been out on the track at 8 o'clock running for Great Britain. Yeah,
Many of the purists will tell you that Derek Ibbotson ran only one truly outstanding world-class race. But over a 15-year running career, he built up an immense following with the British people, and that following was well earned. Derek Ibbotson had paid his dues.
I love him. Ah, do you love him?
Portsea, Australia. Rolling white sand dunes facing the Southern Ocean. It was on these very dunes 25 years ago that one of the greatest middle distance runners of all time was deeply committed to a new style, a new technique of training, a total way of life pioneered by the legendary Australian coach Percy Cerutty. The runner's name? Herb Elliott, known as the Invincible, a runner who achieved it all and retired undefeated. Elliott reflects on the motivating force behind the Cerutty training method.
He was a person that was able to inspire, but he did it not directly, he did it indirectly, and he sort of fanned any appetite that you had in you to succeed. By the time he'd spent a quiet night, winter's night, with Percy around the fire at Portsea, and he'd talk about Beethoven, Jesus, Leonardo da Vinci, all the great people, not who just we know over the last 20 or 30 years, but over hundreds, maybe thousands of years. And somehow or other he gave you the idea that your little piece of greatness, whatever it may be, was a responsibility and a challenge to you. And by the time you'd finished maybe 3 or 4 hours just listening to the man, you were sure of being able to go out and run hell out of yourself for 3 or 4 weeks in training. A tremendously inspirational character. Running is a communion of the physical and the mental and the spiritual, and I have absolutely no doubt at all that the beauty of one's surroundings puts something inside you that fills that reservoir that you need during the hard moments of a race, that you can then sort of pour out and let go. And I used to always try and train in beautiful environments if I possibly could. I think communion with good people, communion with good places were things that built strength into you. I think I was probably the most intense trainer that I've come across in athletics in my time, or even today. And I think that's one of the reasons why I retired so early. My training was incredibly intense, and it was the way I raced intensely, and that's why I think I was never beaten.
Herb Elliott broke the world mile record in Dublin, Ireland on the 6th of August 1958, cutting a huge margin of almost 3 seconds off Derek Ibbetson's year-old mark. Although taking on all comers from all corners of the world, Elliott was never beaten in the 36-mile races he ran, and went on to break the 4-minute barrier a total of 17 times.
This is the moment that makes Elliott Wonder Run possible. The moment he knows that he can still go on, faster yet. Even the loyal Dublin fans give all their cheers not to their own man, Ron Delaney, but to this amazing young hustler from Australia. How does he do it? Elliott attributes it all to his fitness. And as you watch him finish the miracle mile to end all miracle miles, marvel at the wonderfully calm way he takes this, his greatest race. It's the 8th time Elliott's run a 4-minute mile, but this time it's well below 4 minutes. 3 minutes 54.5.
Now, some while ago, I seem to remember you said that you thought 3:55 was pretty well the ultimate for the moment, and you've beaten that.
You've got a good memory. That's the trouble with stating times, especially as your aim or as an ultimate or anything like that. It limits you in a way, and also people hold it against you when you go better than it.
Every time that I ran in a mile, I was very aware of my own weaknesses, my own ability to be beaten, and it doesn't matter where I ran. I always felt there was some opponent that may come and give me a hell of a fright in the last lap when I thought I had it won.
But after a race, I often wonder myself what I thought of during the race. I run in, I think it's almost entirely by instinct. The physical takes over and there's none of the mental left at all.
I never really went into a mile with a sense of communion and invincibility. I always had that sense of fragility about me that gave me that little touch of nervousness and doubt that made me run a hell of a lot faster.
Herb Elliott's single greatest race was at the 1960 Rome Olympics, where he annihilated the opposition to win the 1,500-metre gold medal by 20 metres. On that day, Herb Elliott was truly invincible in a class and race of his own. In fact, his time was so fast, it would have beaten Seb Coe's winning 1,500-metre time at the Moscow Olympics by almost 3 seconds.
Regarding the rest of the field, up to the tape-charged Elliott, a good 15 yards ahead of Ghazi. Rossavolgi third. for Australia and Herb Elliott a great victory and a gold medal.
If you get to the top, there's nowhere else to go but down. But it wasn't really a logical decision. I didn't sit down and weigh all the pros and the cons. It was just a feeling that came from inside me. I'd had enough of it. And once you've had enough, then you have reached your peak. People could say that at 22 years of age, I had the world in front of me and I could have perhaps set the mile record 3 or 4 seconds further back than I did. But people who say that, I don't know whether they're stupid, but they certainly don't understand that to be a mile runner is not just a matter of your physical performance, it's a matter of your hunger to succeed. It's a matter of you feeling good about it and wanting to do it. And if you lose any of those ingredients, then you're at your top. And I, in fact, stopped at my peak, which is the right time to stop.
Having retired undefeated in both the 1 mile and 1,500 metres at the early age of 22, Elliott centred his life around bringing up a family. Today, he lives in a Melbourne suburb and works for a sporting goods company. Never capitalising on his name in the pursuit of big money, he has been able to sustain his reputation as a man with principle and a touch of dignity, and will always be remembered as one of the very few master sportsmen who had the character to get out on the very top with an unblemished career. As a result, every major poll devoted to the mile in recent years has placed Herb Elliott up there amongst the top 2 or 3.
People would try so hard to win if they didn't hate to lose. So I would have hated to have lost. I don't know what would have happened to my career if I had have lost. Perhaps I would have given it away. That would have been being a bad loser, wouldn't it?
The fact that it was Herb's record and Australian was even better, yeah.
The Health and Science University of Texas is today the sanctuary of the athlete who was to snatch Herb Elliott's world mile record and 1,500-metre Olympic title. A brilliant all-round sportsman from New Zealand, the Iron Man, Peter Snell. Built more like a sprinter than a middle-distance runner, Snell didn't appear to outpace his rivals, but outpower them.
I ran against individuals who were clearly much faster than I was. Their 400-metre time may be as 2 or 3 seconds faster, and yet as long as I made it tough enough during the race for them, I could outsprint them and appear to be faster at the end. That's in an 800-metre race, and I think the same can apply in a 1,500-metre. The sort of speed that you might see would be really no faster than about last lap in 52 seconds. Most runners in world class would be able to handle that fairly easy, but being able to do it at the end of a mile and 350 is a different story.
Nothing illustrates Snell's power better than one of his great performances in Modesto, California, where he ran the fastest mile ever in the United States.
But 200 yards from the tape, a tremendous burst of speed by Snell carries him to the lead. He opens a wide gap between himself and second place Weisiger. Beatty third, Grell fourth, and that's the way they finish. Here comes Snell, missing his own world record by half a second.
Taking the fact that Snell broke all conventions as to what size, weight and physical shape the ideal miler should be, even in his prime, he was fascinated by the concept of pushing his own body to the limit of its endurance.
I believe I could get away with this sort of body size up to about a mile. I once ran a marathon in 1962 and was fine for about 22 miles and then lost 11 minutes. And I think I just simply ran out of muscle glycogen.
Snell's place in athletic history is secure through his string of records and titles. He twice broke the world mile record. He broke the world half mile and 1,000-metre records and won 3 Olympic gold medals, including the 800 and 1,500-metre double in Tokyo in 1964, an achievement which still eludes today's best athletes. In fact, Peter Snell never lost when a major title was at stake.
Not everyone needs to have the so-called killer instinct. There are many athletes who have a different approach to this, and this might best be summed up by saying it is more fear of losing. Once a runner has a reputation, and that reputation goes on the line, you become concerned that someone else is going to sort of beat you and maybe sort of diminish that status that you've acquired to build up. And so it's a slightly different approach to the idea of actually wanting to destroy your opponents.
After retiring from the track in 1966, Snell spent several years in public relations with the New Zealand Tobacco Company. But a growing discontent with the limitations of his life in New Zealand caused him to uproot and move to the United States. There, in the early 1970s, he started again, devoting himself to the study of exercise physiology and human performance. He recently earned his doctorate. With a new wife, a new career, and direction in his life, Peter Snell is once again a motivated and committed man. Paris is a city that places its idols on a high pedestal, particularly sportsmen. Few Frenchmen have made it internationally in the field of athletics. In the past 50 years, only one has ever broken the world mile record and achieved genuine world supremacy in middle distance running. A man who in the mid-1960s was a French folk hero and to this day still commands wide national respect. His name? Michel Jarzy. Robert Pariente of France's prestigious sports magazine L'Équipe is a close personal friend of Jarzy. They have both done much to popularize athletics in France.
Le mile, c'est quelque chose de magique. Quand un record du monde du mile est battu, les gens ont tendance à comparer cette performance au premier pas de l'homme sur la Lune, au mur du son.
Michel Jarzy's favorite month is June. Of the 7 world records that he set in his distinguished career, 6 were broken in June. It was also the month in which he was born. A master against the clock, but failing to win a gold medal in 3 Olympic Games, when usually the favorite, Jarzy's greatest race was the night he lowered Peter Snell's world mile record in Rennes, France, in front of his legion of passionate French supporters. Today, Jarzy is giving of his vast experience in helping one of France's brightest middle-distance protégés, who with Jarzy's guidance is hopeful of making the French Olympic team bound for Los Angeles. But Jarzy will always be remembered for his precision running, that smooth, relaxed action that dominated an era in the mid-1960s. Lawrence, Kansas is a small agricultural community in Middle America, strong Ronald Reagan country. It is also the home of a celebrated middle-distance runner, probably the greatest America's ever produced. At the age of 19, he shattered the world mile record by over 2 seconds, and overnight became the first athlete to attain pop celebrity status. It was the era of the Beatles and the swinging 60s. Young success was the vogue. And Jim Ryan from Kansas was the man out front, the new generation of super athlete, the miler to beat. The 17th of July, 1966. The venue, Berkeley, California.
Ryan went to the front, setting a blistering pace, too hot for the rest of the All-American field. His target, to beat Frenchman Michel Jazzy's world best of 3 minutes 53.6. Bearing along for an incredible last lap time of 56.3, magnificent Ryan shattered the world mile record.
I remember distinctly thinking, you know, oh Lord, every race up to this point in time I've run 53 seconds or better on the last lap. And if I were to accomplish that, it would have been a sub 350 mile. But such wasn't the case, it was 56 seconds. And so I was thrilled and elated, but I think the most difficult thing afterwards was being able to, you know, when you're on the verge of success and supposedly accomplishing what you're supposed to achieve, there's this enormous emotional pressure. And when I finished, the media sort of closed in on me, wanting to photograph my every move. And I remember distinctly thinking, you know, finally, you know, they're possibly going to accept me as having made it at some point of success, and maybe they'll accept me as finally being a good runner.
Until the summer of 1968, Jim Ryan had achieved everything. He twice shattered the world mile record, eventually lowering it to 3 minutes 51.1 seconds. He bettered Herb Elliott's already outstanding 1500-meter record by a huge margin of over 2 seconds. He also claimed the world half-mile record. Only one important goal remained, an Olympic gold medal. America expected it of him. But the Olympic Games were to haunt Jim Ryan. First Mexico in 1968, the 1500 meters final. He was mercilessly criticized by the press for running a tactically poor race, leaving his final sprint far too late and coming in second to Kip Keino for the silver medal. The high altitude of Mexico was blamed. 4 years later in Munich, having trained harder than ever before, he was tripped and fell in an early heat and never even made the final. Heartbroken, bitter, Jim Ryan gave up the fight. To this day, he has never really recovered.
Munich was a terribly difficult situation for me, not so much because of the fall. I fell in the earliest round of competition. I was bumped by another runner. Later in the competition, a day later, they would show videos that I was indeed fouled. And you always know as a result of international competition, because it's kind of a bump tassel sort of thing at different times, that there's that opportunity to get bumped and even fall in a race. So that wasn't the hard part for me. The hard part would come about 24 hours later when the International Olympic Committee, having looked at those films, would simply say, that's too controversial. We don't want to do anything. Come back in 4 years and try again. Now, I'm paraphrasing that a bit, but in essence, that's what they said. And for me, I was angry at that point in time because I simply couldn't justify the sacrifice that it would require. I knew what it had taken to get as far as I had, to wait another 4 years after Mexico City. Now to wait another 4 years and to put that same kind of sacrifice on a family that was growing. I had one child at that point, other children on the way, and for me to justify that was a terribly difficult thing. It was at that point in my life where I turned to God and I said, Lord, I need some help. I need some kind of way to resolve this. And eventually the Lord would show me that I had to forgive those men, which was the most difficult thing that I could ever do. It took me months before I could sit down and say, okay, I forgive them for what I thought was a very poor decision. And because I was able to do that, I can now go back to running and say it's fun again. But right after the Munich Olympics, I didn't want anything to do with running again for a long time.
12 years after the shattering experience of Munich, Jim Ryan is back in training, putting in over 100 miles a week on the very same Kansas roads that took him to those peaks of success and glory in the mid-1960s. Jim Ryan's love of running is again a motivating force in his life. 50-year history of the mile, only one African has ever broken the world record, Filbert Bayi, the mountain man who trained in the hills of Tanzania and who dominated middle-distance running in the mid-1970s. Bayi never had the advantage of specialist coaching. His track, his gymnasium, his weight training was against the natural terrain of his homeland.
Before I broke the world record for the mile of 1,500 meters, I didn't have this type of facilities, you know, like universal weight liftings, you know, bench presses and all those type of things. So, as I said before, hills were my weight training. So running on the hills, I really believe on that, and I still believe on running on the hills.
Bayi was the first of the modern generation of front runners, those athletes who sprint from the gun until they break the opposition. For Bayi, this technique was not by design, but more an extension of his natural way of running. The orthodox middle-distance coaches and theorists frowned in disapproval, but for Bayi, the whole point of running was to destroy the opposition at the earliest opportunity.
You know, to beat Seb Coe, or to beat Ovet, or to beat John Walker, or to beat Steve Crump, you have to have speed. Otherwise, with no speed, you better not compete. I understand that. You know, they will kill. I mean, they'll kill.
Bayi exploded into the forefront of world athletics at Christchurch, New Zealand at the 1974 Commonwealth Games, where he took the 1,500-meter gold medal, beating John Walker and Ben Jipko, and also setting a new world record. One year later, in 1975, Bayi snatched Jim Ryan's 8-year-old world mile record in Jamaica.
The impossible has happened. Coghlan, the young boy from Ireland, just passed Bayi, but Bayi put on a spurt. And as they come now to the 3/4 mile, Bayi 2:55.5. Bayi of Tanzania, the one who they say runs 14 miles every day to school. 3.5 miles to school in the morning, 3.5 miles back for lunch, 3.5 miles back to school, and 3.5 miles again in the afternoon home. And there he seems to be pulling away. He seems to be pulling away. And they come now for the last 100 meters. Now it's about 120 there. And he looks behind again at Jordan and puts on that final spurt. Can he match the 53.7 that Ryan did when he broke that mile record? Or what will the time be? They come now, Tanzania's Filbert Bayi has won the dream mile. Filbert Bayi becomes the world's #1 mile.
I world record mile in front of the Prime Minister, Jamaican Prime Minister, in front of the 35,000 people, you know, watching me at night. And I like to fit the 1,500 meters in Christchurch, that in the Commonwealth Games, in front of the Queen, you know. So I really like both of them, and they're really great.
After making his mark in the mid-1970s, Bayi never again scaled the same peaks of success. He moved over to the steeplechase and won a silver medal in the Moscow Olympics, and he's now again in training for the Los Angeles Olympics. Whatever future success lies ahead for Filbert Bayi, his immortality is secure as the only African to break the world mile and 1,500-meter records, something even the other great African runners, Kip Keino and Mike Boyd, were never able to achieve. The joy of running free has never been better expressed than on this open expanse of rolling dunes on the Tasman Sea on the northern coast of New Zealand. This is the training ground of one of the most charismatic middle-distance runners of all time. A runner who popularized athletics as much through his personality and physical appeal as through his immense achievements on the track. His name, John Walker, the first athlete ever to run a mile in under 3 minutes 50 seconds. It's the 12th of July, 1975. The venue, Gothenburg, Sweden.
out. 2:53.5, 3/4 mile. And Harlem Dexter and Bayi. I'd gone over and over in my mind so many times how many times I was going to run that race. I mean, I didn't think about winning, I thought about breaking the world record. I had 10 hours just sitting in a bedroom, getting up, sleeping, watching the wind, watching the flags. I mean, this was all a part of the race. I imagined myself in my mind coming down the last 120 metres all the time, and this was my final victory. I mean, this was my day.
John Walker in the tail.
I mean, I was absolutely ecstatic because I knew as soon as I crossed the line, the reaction from the crowd, the reaction from the press, that I had broken the world record. I didn't know I'd run under 350, and it was only, I was travelling with a journalist by the name of Ivan Agnew, who was also writing a book called Kiwis Can Fly at the time, and it was only when he sort of thrust a watch under my face and said, "You've broken 350," I had no idea what the time was.
And the other time, 3:49.6.
It wasn't until I got back to the hotel room, I mean, all the adulation had died down, the 3 victory laps, the flowers, the kisses, I mean, the waving to the crowd, I mean, all that had gone. And it wasn't until I got back to the hotel room and settled down with a couple of beers that the phone started ringing from all over the world. Then I realised what I'd done.
One year after becoming the first man on Earth to run a mile in under 3 minutes 50 seconds, John Walker confirmed his place in history as one of the all-time great middle distance runners. It's Montreal 1976, the last lap of the Olympic Games 1500-metre final. Walker puts on a display of majestic power running and takes the gold medal.
No one cares about second or third. If you can take the silver medal or the bronze medal in Olympic Games, no one really cares. I mean, the gold medal is the pinnacle. I mean, it's the answer. No one really writes about second or third. It's the champion is the person who wins, and the person that can stave off and beat the best in the world. Winning is everything. If you don't win, I mean, you're nothing. And the adulation and the publicity that came from breaking 350 was probably 4 times more than ever winning the Olympic gold. I wasn't expected to run under 350 for the mile. I was expected to win the Olympic gold medal. But I think winning the gold medal really captured and captivated the whole career. I mean, 1976, my career basically finished, although I'm still running today, because I had reached the pinnacle of anyone's career. I had broken 2 world records. I had run under 350 for the mile, and finally I won the Olympic gold medal. I couldn't do any more in my life.
Nearly a decade after the triumph of Montreal, John Walker is still punishing his body, still running mile events in track meets around the world. He has now run more sub-4 minute miles than any other man, at last count not far short of 100. The critics say he's afraid to retire, afraid of the void beyond, the emptiness of a life without running, without public adulation. Although in the seclusion of his ranch in Auckland, with his dogs and horses, he finds a certain release and contentment, unquestionably, Walker has a need and an addiction to keep running, and still holds aspirations of making it back to the very top. But time is no longer on John Walker's side.
I still believe, even at my age, that I can run close to 3:47.5. I honestly felt that in 1975, when I was really at peak, that the night that I ran 3:49.4 was nowhere near the capabilities of what I could do. And then after that, I spent 3 years of frustration with injuries. And I guess when you said before, what makes an athlete come back from injury? This was one reason, because I really honestly believed that I had not achieved the best in my career, and I still wanted to stay around. I felt that I could run under 3:49. I haven't done it yet, but I'm sure to hell I'm going to try.
I'm not as experienced at running miles or 1,500 metres as a lot of my compatriots, and certainly I'd run probably fewer miles or 1,500 metres before I actually broke the world record, and I would have thought anybody in the history of the sport.
Coming through, they're on schedule for a similar sort of pace on the second lap. As they go through, that's about 1:55 for the half mile. And out goes Lacey, so it's now up to Steve Scott of America, and Sebastian Coe's gone with him, and they're leaving the field. A gap has opened up, Wessinghager not able to move with them.
As far as a lot of people in the field were concerned, I was a jumped-up 800-metre runner, and it was the height of arrogance, really, to step out onto the track with the likes of John Walker and Steve Scott and Dave Moorcroft, guys like this. And I genuinely felt, I mean, I'm being honest, I genuinely felt that I would be chewed up a little bit in that third lap. And I'm afraid I found it very, very easy.
The world's finest runners, and Scott and Coe are well out in front, and Scott has to keep going because he must be terrified of Coe's ability. Coe's devastating finish, and look how relaxed he is.
It was a very strange feeling. I was still expecting it to hurt a great deal more than it was. And secondly, I couldn't believe that a field of milers of the class of the Walkers and the Scotts were actually allowing me to get away from the field. Obviously at the time I had no idea that it was as fast as it was, and that possibly they were struggling a little bit.
Coe at the bell, he's going to be ahead of the field, he looks over his shoulder. The time at the bell
is 2:53. They're not only onto a great race here, but we're onto a very, very fast time. If Coe can finish with the same sort of strength and aggression that he did as he takes Scott on this last lap, we could be on for a world record even. It's Coe now, 8-9 yards in front of Steve Scott, the American, and yards in front of the rest of the field, who are bunching in pursuit. They're sorting out, but really it's a matter of strength. It's Coe now against the clock, and all of the field could be on for a very fast time, but it's Sebastian Coe really making the rest of this field look very, very pedestrian.
He's looking round, but he must be confident. A slight grimace, but he's so relaxed, and he's coming away all down this field. Now they're waking up in the pack behind, but it's too late, they're forgotten. Coe's got time to look around, the crowd are rising, and the time extremely fast, very near that world record, 3:49.4 it was, and he's underneath it. It's a new world record for Sebastian Coe, his second in 12 days, a phenomenal run, a fraction of a second under 3:49, another barrier broached by this remarkable young man, 22 years old.
When Sebastian Coe broke John Walker's world mile record on the 17th of July 1979 in Oslo, Norway, a new track idol was born. A new era of middle distance running was about to begin.
5 seconds, a new world record for Great Britain.
While Seb Coe was the man of the moment, hovering in his shadow was another explosive, highly talented Englishman. A middle distance runner whose moment as a miler was soon to come. His name, Steve Ovett.
If a person is better than the last world record holder or the last Olympic champion, then his times will automatically progress, and we set the target for the next person or the next generation. So in that sense we never really achieve perfection, we just keep climbing up the ladder, I suppose.
Oslo, Norway, the 1st of July 1980.
Not at all bad, and it leaves now Ovett and Cram, this brilliant 19-year-old who's still trying to stay with him, but Ovett fluent and liquid as ever, showing no pressure under strain. What I like about Cram is that he's prepared to make the effort, and now can the crowd lift Steve Ovett round this final lap, because he hasn't let the pace go. At the very moment that Warren began to crack, he took it on. We've always said of him that he can't run on his own. Well, tonight he can prove it different. 2 minutes 51 seconds at the 3/4 mile mark.
And Steve Ovett now has left Steve Cram. Cram trying to hold the distance, but Ovett really beginning to show the class of runner that he is. He's still looking so relaxed. He doesn't look at all under pressure. He looks even more relaxed possibly than Coe did at this stage last year. Very even, being encouraged all the way down the back straight. The crowd are banging on the sides, they're clapping, they're chanting in time with his running. He's got to run this last lap in around 57 seconds to break what is almost an unbeatable world record. Steve Ovett now coming round, Has he relaxed too much? He looks too relaxed at this stage. He surely isn't running fast enough to break the world record.
And yet he's a tenth of a second faster than Coe was at the 1500-metre mark. It's all down to this last 80 metres now, and he's staying with it. But he looks so relaxed, it's going to be desperately close. 3:49 the time to beat, 3:49 the existing record, and he's inside it. 3:48.8. Ovett takes the world record from his greatest rival, Sebastian Coe.
What time do you say we're going to be there?
I said about 10:30.
First, it's the Marshall War catalogue, Steve.
3, yep. 1, 2, 3, yep. It's good looking to the back over the top there, it's good. Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
1, 2, 3. Good. 1, 2, 3, yep.
Hairy armpits, is that alright?
Yes, yeah, alright.
Huh?
Just shooting women along.
I know some women with hairy armpits too.
That's nice. Very good. Give it that again. And again, yeah. Try and keep that arm down a little bit if you can, your left arm. All right, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it's good. Okay.
Steve Ovett and Sebastian Coe epitomise the modern athlete. Gone is the era of a world-class miler fitting in training around a full-time job. Today, to have any real chance of reaching the top, an athlete's commitment must be total. The most modern facilities and training techniques have become a necessity. Hours of painful dedication in isolated daily training is normal. And to be scheduled, the commercial considerations, capitalizing on the celebrity, the name and public image. Only a mere handful make it to this level. Sebastian Coe and Steve Ovett are at the pinnacle, among the most popular and in-demand track athletes anywhere in the world. Household names, yet far more complex people in reality than the public image might project.
I'm a very cold individual, always have been. Very analytical, very cold, very unemotional about all situations. That's my greatest asset. I don't flap.
Fear was as big a reason why I came back in 1980, having lost the 800 metres. I just didn't want to go into obscurity. I wanted to win because it was my life, and I didn't like having something that I was very good at taken away from me.
I think the greatest winners, the greatest competitors, are people that know defeat. They're not frightened of it. They know it so well that they don't want any part of it.
Some of the American psychologists believe, in terms of sport, that you've got to actually go out and enjoy it and feel good feelings towards your competitors and all this sort of stuff. Well, I'm perhaps not quite as sold on that in the heat of battle.
Despite being the two greatest middle-distance runners in world athletics in the late 1970s and early 80s, Sebastian Coe and Steve Ovett have only met twice on the track in the past 4 years, at the Moscow Olympic Games.
Coe starting somewhat tentatively on the outside, and Ovett cruising. Kirov on the inside has gone off fast, and Guimarães of Brazil is licking away in lane 3. Tall figure Wagenknecht coming round as well, and Coe is right on the outside and he's taking it easy. He's following Andreas Busse in, and at the moment no one wants to take the pace. You saw the bumping and boring there. Warren finds his way around. Ovett going wide, doesn't want to get caught, and this is going to be a slow race. So Coe in second place, and there's Busse coming round him, and Wagenknecht, the two East Germans. Dave Warren sitting on the shoulder of the Brazilian, who is the slowest in the field. And Ovett tucked on the inside is going to be in a difficult position to respond. He's got his eye on Coe, but he's well off the pace, and it's very, very slow. So watch for Dave Warren as they come up to the bell to look like going. The East German now, Wagenknecht pushing through, and Busse too.
Warren to pick the pace up here. It's 54.55 at the bell. Very, very slow pace. Seb Coe is trapped off the back. Ovett is trapped in on the curve. He's pushed his way through once, and now the pace begins to build up as Dave Warren takes it up. Coe's sat at the back there. He's now going to come down as they're down the back straight. He's coming down the outside. Steve Ovet's coming out into a much better position. He doesn't want to get trapped, and he sets off, and the race is really on for the line.
And it's Kirov who's decided to go, and Ovet's in there with him, and Coe is in 5th place and coming around the outside like a steam train. He's past Wagenknecht, and Guimaraes won't be able to respond to him. Kirov is going off the front. Ovet's got him on his sights, and now Coe coming up behind, and Ovet hits the front, and he's got to keep those arms moving. Coe coming through into 3rd place, fighting with the Brazilians, but Ovet's got 5 or 6 metres, and Ovet's going to take it easily. It was a slow run race, and he came through and he kicked decisively. Ovet first, Coe second, Kirov third. The time 1:45.4. The last 200 metres of 25.2 seconds. And Steve...
I woke up the following morning. I felt dreadful. In fact, I went out on the road for a training session. I ran about 10 or 12 miles. Was shadowed the whole distance of the course by British photographers. And then during the following week, newspapers arrived at the village, and the caption above the photograph of me out on the road was Coe's Trail of Shame. So I realised then that that I had luckily a few days to get myself together, and I also took solace in the fact that had I been Jim Ryan in 1972, my games would have been over.
Now they're in single file. Straub of East Germany, Seb Coe, Steve Ovet and Busser from East Germany. Busser not looking too comfortable in 4th place, but he could become a danger. The pace still pushing along. Marajo of France moves up into 5th place. Coe still sat back there. Ovet is watching him all the way down the back straight. Ovet beginning to wind up now, ready for a strike.
Yes, he's going to be ready to take Coe as they go into the bend and trap Coe behind Straub. Straub with 200 to go. And he's way off the front, and here goes Ovet starting to move up. Coe is starting his sprint now, and it's between these three, the 3 class men of the field. Coe hits the front, looks around, and he's got Ovet on his shoulder. And now this is the test. He's got 2 metres on him, and Ovet's going to have to sprint all the way here. Coe's away at the front, and it looks as if Coe's going to do it. Coe is going to win the 1,500 metres, and Ovet's going to get only a bronze medal. A fantastic run by Coe. He's done it. He's got the gold. In 2nd place, Straub, and Ovet just left it too late. He ran it right off the front, a last lap there of about 52.3, and he cannot believe it. A fantastic run after the misery of last weekend when he lost in the 800, and now everything is back and golden again. Steve grins. He's not taking it badly.
Well, that was unbelievable. All credit to him to come back from such a psychological low to the bashing that he took in the 800 metres. And he can't believe that. He's dancing up and down on the back straight. He shook us all. He made it out to the front. We all waited for Ovet to take his kick, to come off the bend, to run back at him. We expected them to be stride for stride.
I think if he'd have been beaten in the 15 by myself or Straub or someone like that, the world would have just said, well, Seb's a failure. A horrible thing to actually to do, but they would have done, there's no doubt about it. I mean, the press were actually loading the guns, waiting to fire them almost on that particular day.
When I lost the 800 metre final in Moscow, I lost an 800 metre final. It didn't matter whether Steve was black, brown, or, it didn't matter where he came from. It was just the fact that I'd lost it. And the fact that it was him that had beaten me was construed in other quarters as being very important. To me, it was totally insignificant.
I don't know much about Seb. I don't live and breathe him. I don't wake up every morning with his picture above my bed, throwing darts at it, that type of thing, or I don't think about him when I'm running. It doesn't matter to me that we haven't raced that much. I think that's, in many ways, I suppose, part of the mystique.
I don't really know the guy. We've always had the problem of having lived in very distinct, different parts of the country.
Yes, I know Seb's failings. Yes, I know my own failings. I'm not going to tell you, though. But I also appreciate his good points, and mine as well.
Already the countdown has started for the next confrontation between Steve Ovet and Sebastian Coe. At the Los Angeles Olympics, both are training harder than ever before. Their pride allows them only to consider winning an Olympic gold. Anything less would be deemed failure. But if the record books are a barometer by which greatness will be judged in years to come, only one man has broken the world mile record 3 times in the past 4 decades. Only one man has held simultaneously the world 800 meter, 1,000 meter, 1,500 meter, and 1 mile records, Sebastian Coe. To many, Potentially, he's the most complete middle distance runner of them all. Although it is impossible, even unfair, to compare athletes from different eras, the record books will confirm that as a miler, Seb Coe has been a master of his generation.
Set in a mile of the 5 fastest miles ever run. They're past the 1,000 metres and still Byers running, but now his head going back and his legs getting tired and his arms dropping, and this is where Coe must take it on. In Zurich, they asked Mike Voigt, why didn't you take on the lead? He said, it was so fast I couldn't. I was grateful to stay with Sebastian. And now they're 40 or 50 yards ahead of the rest of the field. And this is where Coe is once again running the last 500 on his own. Steve Scott's great plan has done him no good at all. He's way, way behind. And Coe is away 2:51.9 at the 3/4 mark on our official times. That's faster than he ran in his own last world mile record. And Mike Voigt is still in there with him. These two did some amazing training sessions in Switzerland 2 weeks ago. And Voigt is the only person with a prayer of getting near Coe now. Down the back straight, trying to relax, relaxing those hands, relaxing the neck muscles, knowing that it's from here as Peter Coe shouts across at him, and he looks across at his father, and his father says, go. We've got the time up for the 1,500 metres, and we'll take a split time there. 3:31.36 is Hovek's record, and he's just going to be fractions of a second outside that. 32.93, so much faster than he ran in Zurich. And now we'll see the time to beat. 3:48.4, the world record is the time to beat. And Voigt is still hanging in there. And Coe coming in, the crowd are cheering him on. It's a wonderful run, it's unbelievable. It's a second inside the world record. It's absolutely superlative running. Absolutely superlative running. He's turning around, trying to see the time on the scoreboard. A phenomenal run. The world record is regained by Seb Coe again tonight. And the rest of the world's milers finish in his wake, and nobody even noticed them. Wonderful running.
Was that the time you were looking for?
Yeah, why not? Let's be honest. I just felt I was capable of running somewhere around about that. You can never tell what night it's going to come on though.
And what about the actual pace? You were talking about going through very fast. You indeed went through fast, but must have been feeling it on that last lap.
Well, I went through, but I relaxed this time. I followed and relaxed, and was able to find something a little bit more on that last lap. The last lap here tonight felt easier than in Zurich.
So when can we expect to go even faster than that then?
If I want to run significantly faster than 3:47, which I sincerely hope I'm going to, then I have to approach a race from a slightly different standpoint. Gone are the days when it was enough to go through the 3/4 mile mark in 3 minutes, and then hope that your last lap will take you significantly under 60 seconds and leave you with a 3:55. That's a very good, still a very fast time, but in a world-class assembled field, it's probably not even going to get you into the first 10 places.
I confess completely that in 1954 I could not have conceived a mile being run in 3:47. I would have been prepared to bet very big money that that was impossible. So I don't intend to make a prediction for the year 2000.
My standard always was that if you took the world record for 880 yards today and you doubled it, beyond that it would be impossible to do it.
We still overprotect ourselves. We still stop that last drain, that challenge to death, if you like.
I can see someone possibly averaging 55 seconds per quarter mile, possibly, in the long, long distant future, maybe by the year 2000. And that would correspond to about a 3:40 mile. I really don't think I will ever see a mile run under 3:40.
Mais il me semble que d'ici 10 ans, le record du monde du mile sera à 3 minutes 45 secondes.
To run faster by the year 2000, we're going to have to see some milers who are going to run, very, very well at 400 meters, maybe, close to a world record pace, and yet they can carry that on out and run a 1,500 mile world record. They're going to have that kind of versatility.
I think in the year 2000, I see people will be flying.
And they're getting stronger, they're getting bigger, they're getting faster, they're becoming more fluent. And I think what will happen is that the athletes will become more scientific.
We'll probably be finding that we get excited about a world record being broken by 3 minutes of a second in the year 2000. All these things occur, and I think it'd be fascinating. I'd love to be around, hopefully, touch wood, to watch it all happen.
It annoys me intensely when I hear television commentators say 4 minutes, well, of course, yes, great run, but Coe or Ovett or Jasi or whoever it would have been that much further up the track when Bannister was entering the finishing straight. Bannister was a very, very talented athlete for his time. The 4-minute barrier is still a remarkably tough barrier.
Well, I think 3.5 minutes is conceivable. That is based on physiological principles of how much oxygen the lungs can breathe in and out and the blood can transport.
He was doing it on very limited scientific knowledge. He was doing it on tracks that really, speedway riders would probably turn their noses up at now. He was doing it on a wartime diet as well. And as far as I'm concerned, that was one of the great runs of all time.
I was 10 when the war broke out, so all the time I was a teenager and growing, we were rationed. And although everybody had the same food, you obviously couldn't do such hard training. And I didn't really start until I was 17. We used to have leather shoes, and the spike was in a basis of steel or iron, so that was fairly heavy. And the only thing you could do was to sharpen the spikes, and I used to rub graphite on the spikes on the day of a big race.
You sharpened the spikes by just simply filing them?
Yeah, well, yes, I was working in a laboratory, physiology laboratory, and there was a grindstone. On a day like this, what would you think the track would be?
Well,
worse?
As you said, I mean, not every cinder track is going to be looking at a bad time of the year, but I would say conservatively, half a second a lap. And probably this kind of surface could account for 2 or 3 seconds a lap.
Yes. I was involved, of course, as a medical student, and the course then runs the whole of the day, virtually. So I used to miss a lecture at lunchtime, which I didn't regard as very important, and still tried to keep the evening free. I didn't like training interfering with the evening, and so managed to do that. Because there was only one session a day, and it only lasted sort of about 45 minutes, sort of one way. And I think it was really quality rather than quantity that was important, and that provided you didn't spend long warming up, went straight into hard interval training, and then a quick shower, that seemed to be all that was necessary.
Yes, I think one of the problems now is that people kid themselves in actually in that they think the quality is greater than it is, and the quantity is sort of paramount importance.
Yes. Well, I remember there always were a lot of athletes then who spent a long time. They would, consider whether they should be doing an interval in this or that, and was it wrong to do it on a Tuesday or Wednesday? And the self-obsession with detail, which didn't really seem to make much difference. I mean, it was the overall